call this meeting to order. I'd like to have an adoption of the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda.
Second. Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Under the new business, 2-3-way marketing. I think I'm gonna let Ella start this.
I didn't know y'all was gonna let me do this.
Oh, yeah. That's why we pay the big
We
bucks.
get on.
Well, you're not paying me enough. Yeah, the reason, this meeting was called, there's been some issues with the 2-way, 3-way marketing that has been going on over the years. My understanding, and please any of y'all on council correct me if I say something that is not right. Through research that has been done, there was no official approval of these committees, of the 2-way and 3-way marketing committee. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. And what I've gone back to and done, and some of you have already have these reports for the 2- and 3-way marketing that was submitted to you the end of last year, actually through the end of last year. And my understanding is that what needs to transpire is that we need to, I don't know how y'all want to handle this. Do y'all want to no longer do this? How do y'all want to handle this? I mean, y'all need to give me some guidance on what y'all want to do with this. So,
Do we need a motion to?
no,
Yeah, it's a different type of setup, right, so we can have more of an
we can, right,
interaction.
that's why this meeting was scheduled. Yes, sir.
Um,
So we were not required a motion to discuss.
From my perspective, go ahead,
No, that's not.
I defer to your age.
Well, I thought I always thought that was a good idea. Really good idea, because they were informal and allowed more discussion about marketing, anything that we can do to promote, find ideas to do marketing, and everybody was contributing money to these discussions, and they just all of a sudden died. And I don't really know why. And I was incapacitated most of the year, unfortunately. So I don't know. Right. But I think they're a good idea. Let's put that.
Moody, you got any comment?
I don't really understand, was there ever any formal setup, or is this kind of an informal, we'll get together and talk about marketing on occasion, or?
There was
No, it was
no,
a formal setup.
no, sir.
We
It
had
was,
scheduled meetings and there was money contributed.
yes, sir,
all
but it
funds.
was never formally approved by council for the minutes. I went back and reviewed the minutes, and these committees, there was a marketing committee, I believe it was in 14.
2014, there was a marketing committee that the council voted on, and there was never a vote by the council for the 2-way, 3-way expenditures of funds and how that was going to be accomplished. And based on what we've gone through here recently, is that there was a commingling of funds, which is not the best way to run the business, and the city is a business. So because this is more of an informal than a normal city, you know, Doug was the past POA president, and Steve is the current president of the POA. Ed's with the club, and I think that's it for the 3-way, 2-way, the city's represented. Maybe if Doug or Steve and Ed Worley could explain how this 3-way, 2-way actually getting the funds moved from the club to the city and from the POA to the city, and how it was determined that they understood things in lieu of the fact that the city never voted on the actual operation of a 3-way, 2-way marketing fund. If you could explain that, maybe that would help us.
Well, I can explain Ed Worley here. And,
This is kind of an
I'll be glad to opine here. I can't speak for how the city side of this should have worked, so whether it was approved or not, I guess it stood the test of the audit at least. We didn't get in trouble over that. But the concept worked very well for several years. And I guess the detail of this is the three-way fund included contributions from the club, POA, and the city. And that became a good mechanism for funding the community events that we did each year. The 4th of July events and Fall Fest, which was the preponderance, if you look at the reports, that's the preponderance of the money that went in there. Now, the club only contributed to that one. The club does about $30,000 of their own marketing, so what little bit was left over the three-way fund, representatives from each organization, the city, the club, the POA, met on a regular basis and went through line by line the opportunities out there that we felt might be worthwhile to advertise and market the value. And you can see those in the reports. You can see where those were done. The two-way fund likewise was represented by the city and by the POA. And Doug, I don't know if you were on that committee. I can't remember.
I sat on some.
You sat on some, but they would sit down with the city manager and they would go through various opportunities that were given to us and try to make reasonable judgments as to what would be beneficial and what would not. But in some place there should be some minutes that confirmed all of that, or at the very least, after each meeting, these forms would be updated to tell us where the individual monies were spent. Unfortunately, I guess the ball kind of got dropped, and I don't think you really need to point the finger at any one person because you got three groups involved, and none of them really raised the flag. I remember meeting with you, Al, and Howard, and several of us. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but then there's never been, since then, anyone that kind of raised the flag and said, hey, we need to sit down and make a budget for 2019. So our controller at the club, he's accruing the money that we've been contributing in the past, waiting to see a budget from this, quote, committee that normally would meet and establish the budget where the money would be spent. And I think what kind of maybe brought this up, and hence this is a good time for us to go through this and decide what we want to do going forward, but I think the city has been funding all the activities this year, and they shouldn't have to. I mean, I don't think the POA nor the club wants to back out of at least the three-way fund, the contributions, and the sharing of those expenses, the fireworks, etc.
Okay.
So,
Let me intertwine here as well. When we did the audit for last year, when my auditor came in and met with me, I raised the question about the commingling of funds. There is no separate account that has been established for marketing for the city of Sky Valley, so it's all been just commingled together. And I raised concerns about that because that should have never happened. It should have been set aside in a separate account, and it should have been accounted for that way. You can run all the reports you want, but when you take in contributions and you don't know exactly where your money is spent, that's not a good way to operate as a business for us or for the club or the POA. And I think that's an issue that I wanted to address, is how, y'all want to move forward, because to me, that was not very well done. I just felt like that was not the way it should have been operating.
Yeah, Howard Beckert first brought it up to me in a meeting we had down at the timeshares regarding the travel magazine. And at that time, he expressed to me that the club wanted to get out of the three-way marketing committee. He didn't see the need anymore for the club to be involved now that they were more financially stable. So that's kind of what prompted me to do it. And then the meeting we had on 4th of July down at City Hall that you were in, we had that same conversation. And everybody felt the same, so kind of get...
well, just I can tell you, as far as this year is concerned, the club has accrued the money, and the club is more than willing to participate in the community events, so.
Where's the POA's, what's the POA's position, Steve?
Let me just, a little history. I was involved as president in 16, 17, and 18. When I first came into it, I think it was actually fairly well organized. We saw the money going into the pot together. I think there's two questions here, whether you ever authorized a committee or not. I can't speak to that at all, but there was money set aside. I don't know in the budget because I didn't do the audit or any of that, but I know there was money set aside and accounted for early on. As 17, 18 came around, the accounting for it and where it was going was, getting loose, let's just say. I've got some accounting that goes back, to 15, 16 time period and so forth. My understanding was the three-way marketing was substantially marketing. Billboards and a lot of that, if you look at the expenditures.
The two-way.
The two-way fund, I thought was more the events and so forth. And I may be, you're saying backwards.
You got it backwards.
Well, okay, if you look at expenditures though, and the accounting for it, they're both in there. There's marketing billboards in both of them, and there's events that appears in both of them.
No.
Way back when. Okay.
And I might add too, I've been trying to get a marketing committee going, but if there are minutes of the previous marketing committee, I've never seen them, and I looked for them, couldn't find them.
They're on the city's website.
The marketing committee is on the city's website?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, well, I'll look it up. As you know, that's not the easiest, and I've navigated a lot of it. But,
I'll be happy to email you directly.
okay. So anyhow, we looked at ourselves and we didn't have a plan, so we have spent no money for marketing this year. Because we didn't have a plan, and there's no use wasting money if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish. I couldn't even find anybody, now granted, I haven't talked to Doug, but I couldn't even find anybody who'd been on that committee, so. Just kind of the fun.
Well, I've been on the committee, Doug's been on the committee. Gordon.
The POA had designated individuals on the committee. Ed Dean was on it when I first came in as president. Ed was on it. Later, I think Debbie Dahlhaus was on it. I kind of came and went depending on when they were available, for the committee, from the POA's perspective. But I do agree it became pretty lax, and getting a meeting together became difficult.
Well, the only plan I have here goes back to 2014, which is totally out of date. I mean, that's the only thing that is available, and I think anybody that has come and looked at it, the only thing that is available is back to 2014. That was done by a student from UGA.
Is there a protocol for how the committee was to be formed, how it was to be selected, what its mission was? Is that document someplace?
No, sir, that's what we cannot find. There is none of that. That's the issue here that we're trying to address.
I think the
Yes,
consensus
sir.
is that the marketing effort, joint marketing effort is of value. I think that you have to start at square one, which is to establish a framework around which the marketing committee is going to exist. I know back a number of years ago, I attended some of the marketing meetings, and I was disillusioned from the fact that I asked what accountability there was going to be, how we were going to measure the effectiveness, etc.
Right.
And I can tell you that all I got was blank stare. That wasn't part of the plan. So,
Barbara Kobacker. It seems to me that this would be a wonderful opportunity to start from ground zero and say, let's get a marketing committee, but let's get feedback out of that marketing committee. And let's not have it just be a bunch of amateurs who think they've got a great idea about a Facebook page or something. I think you've got to be more professional from beginning to end. And I think you need to have some professional guidance, because all of us have marketed lemonade stands and stuff. But come on, this is a city, and what a great opportunity to start from ground zero and do it right, and let the citizens know what you're doing. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Jim, have you got anything to
Well,
add?
it just to summarize what I think I've heard here is that in general, we realize that marketing for Sky Valley is a good idea. We didn't go into all the reasons, but that seemed to be pretty uniform. It also seems like there are issues of formal structure and accountability. And I know that, you know, we may not need to start over at ground zero. I know POA has done some things this summer to get us back, you know, sort of kick-started. I'm thinking that we need to propose a formal structure to go forward with.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and it needs to be done through, we have to reestablish a marketing committee.
It needs to have some guidelines, as
Yeah.
Mr. Horton was saying. We need to establish to how it needs to be formed, who needs to, you know, who needs to serve on it, and have some real guidelines of how it's to be structured and accountability, and do a separate account that shows exactly where things are coming and going from.
And possibly even two separate accounts, because there was a reason we had the two-way and the three-way.
Right, and just because a marketing committee's formed, doesn't mean the marketing committee's necessarily gonna have funds available to it. I think it still needs to be looked at on a project-by-project basis. You can take the golf travel magazine as an example. It's way more beneficial to the club, but there's some huge benefits to the city as well. That's why I'm in favor of putting several $1,000s towards that to get us on the map. There's other things like billboards that may make sense for one more than the other. I mean, a public golf course, highest and coolest, #1 in Georgia, but I love that on the billboard, but maybe not a single-family home residence advertisement's not as much of an impulse buy as a Chick-fil-A billboard or something, or let's go check out the Two-Bit or something. So a committee needs to be formed, and once the committee's formed, when it has budgeting requests or has ideas that it wants to get funded, it should come back before the city council at one of our work sessions that we've been having before the regular meeting and make a presentation. Here's what the cost is going to be. Here's our anticipated results, because the results that we got from the 53,000 that was being budgeted just by the city and the additional 14 that was being put in by the POA and the monies by the club, the results don't seem that great. I mean, we don't seem to have a 10,000 plus database that we're getting information to. We don't seem to be getting targeted ads out there using Google AdWords and things like that, where we can go into targeted markets that we know people are up here looking. So there's a lot of ideas and out there. It's time for us to work on the new marketing plan anyway, because with the 2019 Reagan County Comprehensive Plan that's going on right now. So it's a good time to put something in place.
Before that, I'll just add my 2 cents here. That before the city can ever officially say yes to everything, is the fact that it has to go before the council, and the council has to vote at a regular meeting. Now, I'm not saying you can't take somebody off the council right now to form a committee,
but before the state, the county, not the county, the city can vote on anything, we're gonna have to approve it in the very beginning. But we can work on this, and you can form your committee, and then bring the proposal that Bill said. Once you get that all down in writing, bring it to the city. The city will either vote yes or no on it. It's up to the council. And if they say to go ahead, then we'll be into this. But the committee's got to remember to have somebody besides the city handle the financing and all that, because we're not going to be doing the financing part of it. So, that's okay.
Yeah, that's, I don't fully understand what you just said, but what I was gonna say,
Go ahead.
marketing is many things. I worked for Fortune 500 companies in sales and marketing for the last 16 years. I taught marketing, so I know a little bit about it. I'm not volunteering to take any position yet, but I want to give some input.
Would you introduce yourself, sir?
My name is Bob O'Keefe. We've owned a home up here for 2 years, and just came up here full-time in May. So we've been around a little bit, we've vacationed here in years past, but we're now here permanently. Marketing is several things. Most people think it's promotion, which is what I hear is being talked about here. Promotion is communicating to your market. That's only one aspect of marketing. It's also designing and developing the products and distributing the products. So we have to have a plan other than, hey, let's throw $5,000 up against a billboard and hope it sticks. There has to be goals, just like a company. If you were a product manager for a company, you work for a project, for a department with a marketing VP, what do we want to accomplish? And then how do you go about doing that? That's the promotional part. It's also the designing of the products. What are we gonna promote? Okay, are we going to have activities? And then how are we gonna make sure that we don't physically have products, so we don't have to worry too much about distribution, other than how are you communicating to your market? Now, when I was in college, and this is a long time ago, our professor broke up the class. And I worked for a radio station up in New York, up in the hinterlands, and he gave us that project. You go market this thing and come back with your plan, and we present it to the radio station, and they adopt it or they don't. Now, what I'm saying to that is there are probably, I heard you mention the University of Georgia. Well, if Dr. Elaine Adams is still there, we're fairly decent buddies. We could possibly get a college, whether it be UGA or the college up the road, to get their marketing students to help us with this and get free, semi-experienced help. They do the work, they make the phone calls, they do this, they do that, they come up, and nowadays you can do the graphic arts type of work. We can get help here that costs us nothing. And then we sit down and come up with a plan of promotion. Now, not just as the lady back here said, hey, this is a good idea, let's slap it up against the wall. Because just because somebody has an idea doesn't mean it's going to work. I've always told my students that in business, you have to basically justify that it's going to work in whatever way you can. Either this company's done it and we can do it, or based on the analytics, we're going to reach this amount of people. And even after the fact, if we do something, we need to be able to track its effectiveness. Okay? If we have a visitor center, great. How many people came in there, and who we contact, and where's the list? And then we can do something else, just like you do. We all got this wonderful thing in our pocket, and every day I'm getting more texts from people who want to sell me stuff than people I care to talk to. Now, for us, that would be a good thing, if we were talking about marketing. So I think it's got to be, yes, you have to probably pick some people that you think can do the job. I always talk about people being capable and able. Capable means you got the tools to do the job. Able means you got the time and the construct and the money and whatever to do it. Because some people that are able are not capable. And some people that are capable just got too much on their plate. So you gotta come up with a committee. And I don't think it needs to be a committee that has 10 people on it. That's ridiculous. That's too many cooks stirring the pudding. But you've gotta come up with a committee of who everybody agrees to. And because it's a 2-way, 3-way, 4-way, 5-way, there's 4 entities that I understand are part of this. And it can't be ruled by one. And if in business, many of you folks have been in business, I know Al's been in business, you can't have things take forever because you have to have a hierarchy of people, voting on every single move you make. So there's got to be maybe some exceptions to the rule of how things are done under the town council, because this isn't only the town council. This is 4 entities. Okay? So that's my thought at this point. You got to come up with a committee that is capable and able. You have to come up with goals. That if you appoint that committee, you have to be able to say, we're putting them in charge of that committee. Just like, and I'm probably throwing stuff out there that I'm not fully aware of, but let's say we have a police department, okay? The police department doesn't discuss everything with every single body, I'm assuming. You put somebody in charge of that police department that's got the authority to do it as well, because the worst thing to have is responsibility and no authority. So we've got to break things down. You talk about this being a business, you got to run it like a business. You can't always run it like a government. Because it could be where, 2 people decide they don't like that guy and they're not going to vote for anything that he proposes. And I'm not saying it's happening, I'm just saying we've all seen it happen in our lifetime. So what I'm thinking as a newbie to Sky Valley, but somebody who's, I would consider myself a professional in marketing, we got to do things a certain way to get it done. And if there's a budget, that's the budget. If that committee says, based on the numbers, based on the analytics, we should do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and maybe we can have somebody overview it a little bit, but it can't be that they got veto power. Or else it ain't gonna work. You might as well just give the money back to everybody who's got it, and slap some stuff up out on the street, and hope something sticks to the wall. So, I know I'm loud and I'm long and I've been in marketing and I'll fill up the airspace and now I'm done.
Ma'am?
I presume that we have been doing some marketing, some publicity for years and years, and I was just wondering, what have we used as our parameter of effectiveness? I mean, what have we been looking at to gauge how well we've been doing in the past? Because I haven't heard anyone say.
Well, that's what I said. They didn't want to measure. There was no interest in measuring. There was just interest in doing some things.
Well, I heard.
You need to have accountability. Now, I know that there's some of the numbers have been looked at by especially some on council, and they didn't show much effectiveness in certain areas. But I'm not sure that was a real good analysis. I really think we need to start back at the beginning. We need to put together whatever it is that's going to tell how this is formed, and then it needs to be organized in such a fashion with accountabilities and mission, and the fact that it's going to be measured.
Sure.
Now, to the point of the gentleman up here, I do believe that a graduate student from the University of Georgia put together a marketing plan for Sky Valley, which I don't think probably 3 people in here read. But there is a lot of things, so you need to look at history first before you go forward, There's things that have been done that have been good. There's things that are questionable. But also, I see where the city has a problem because they have fiduciary responsibilities that are covered under state law, and there's certain things they can't do. So it might be that this has to be set up as a separate entity where the funds go, and then they're dispersed out from that entity.
Councilman Wheeler, you were mentioning a magazine where you would recommend we continue to spend money, and so you must have been at least looking there to see.
That's what I was referring to, just this year, the club has brought in Doug Collingsworth, and he actually came and spoke here for the first time back in 2014 and 2015, and gave a presentation, but nobody was ready to pull the trigger at that time. From everything that he and the folks who work with him have put out so far, I like what I see. They've been actually able to formulate a product that we have here into words, which was something Mr. O'Keefe hit on. You gotta have a product to develop a marketing plan. So that's one of the things I'd like to see is get a good solid land use plan. The one we have now is spelled out in that 2014 plan, needs some work, you know.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Bill Oliver. Before I get started, I want to agree with Bob. I also have held significant marketing positions both in North America and globally for other businesses. And all of this is great conversation, but at the end of the day, we have to look at this holistically. Because the effectiveness of marketing needs to be additive to what everybody's doing. You can't just have everybody doing their own thing. There's got to be some sort of consistency. It goes back to the design that Bob talked about. It has to be a holistic approach and plan so that we can clearly see where we want to go, what we want to accomplish, what is the branded message we're putting out there, and how's the most cost-effective way to get that done. And that's where the professionals come in to help craft that. Take all the ideas, take all of the feedback from the citizens here, really identify what the key pieces are. And I think Steve's group has done a decent job getting that started and prioritizing, and there was a professional leading that from the minute side of that. So at the end of the day, I think it's all a great thing. And I think, you know, if we step back and holistically look at it, come together with a good plan that we all believe is going to benefit all of us, city, community, everything, I think that's a great start and get some professional help to do that. And there's a lot of cost-effective or no-cost ways, not only to get that developed, but also get the marketing out.
Mr. Mayor, what you say?
Just to kind of go back to the very beginning, I know this is all great to formalize a plan, but I didn't hear any mention of the timeshares being part of the marketing group.
And they
Is
should
that-
be. They should be. Yeah, I was up here just making a list, and he was talking about the 4 people, and I see Shelley is here to represent us, so yes, she definitely is going to be involved in this.
Thank you. Okay. I think it's important.
Yes.
Thank you.
Neil, go ahead.
This is my 8th year on city council. I've heard a lot of this before, way back. And we did have a college student, I guess, a graduate student, come, and if you see signs that are still left around, it says, Sky Valley, your new home base. That was the result of his study and working with us. Okay, so that was tried. We bought a building and put a name on it, Visitor Center. I never thought it got to its potential. And I would suggest that, yes, I'm for doing this in the future, and I'm for the city putting their representative, the club putting their best representative, the timeshare putting their best representative, you know, POA putting their best representative, and we delegate the authority. You can't delegate responsibility. You can't hold them responsible for anything if you didn't give them the authority to make the decisions.
Exactly right.
That's the first principle I learned at Georgia Tech in a marketing class.
You're a hell of an engineer.
You can take that both ways. And you're right, marketing is hard. How do you measure whatever you do? But we didn't use the visitor center to try to obtain any real data. Everybody that comes in to the town, you want to ask, how'd you hear about us? And they might say, I didn't hear about it, I just stopped by. Fine, okay, that's a check mark. Anybody that comes in here and goes to a realtor, all our realtors probably ought to have a little sheet, and we'll pay them maybe to keep the data. How did you find out about it? What do you want? And every source of any new person coming here and buying a house ought to be interviewed by this committee to find out how they found out about us and what sources. And I have never heard anybody talking much about it. And I'll have to say that I was remiss in not mentioning myself. But I didn't think I had the ear of the right person at the right time. You know, that's an excuse, you know, but
That's true.
anyway, that's my little, and I support everything you said.
Thank you, Steve Mason, Property Owners Association. Bob, you mentioned that the city's got to approve all this. The problem is, there are two problems as I see with that. One, then we have the responsibility, but we don't have the authority, assuming there's a market. I'm talking about a marketing committee. Secondarily, it slows the process way down. And third, the city only has a third of the money, but they want 100% of the control. That's not a workable solution. Now, I heard somebody say another mechanism. Perhaps what we need to do is set up a separate 501c3 or C4 organization to do this, and us all put money into it. Does that sound like that might work?
Let
I'm
me
just throwing that out there.
interject into
Yes,
that.
go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
The one thing I sort of see with that is, how do you plan to do July 4th stuff and Fall Fest? Right now, Fall Fest, the city handles totally. I mean, these events are major events for
Yeah.
Sky Valley. That's something, to me, that needs to be addressed, including all this. Because as you see in the paperwork that I just handed you this morning, these reports I read this morning, we spent over $7,700 just for July 4th, 78. So I think it's something that we need to make sure of, if this is all going to happen and how he has suggested that we do it. I would think what we need to do is decide who is going to be responsible for what in including this, as far as the continuation of like Fall Fest, July 4th, and do some delegation of duties.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, for instance, the ladies that have stepped up this year for Fall Fest and doing the hay bales. They have done a fabulous job this year. They've stepped up. The garden club, you know, has come in and contributed for the decorations as well. I mean, and this has been a very good group effort, but it's because somebody stepped up and took responsibility. And I can say that from my 3 years here, you don't see that very often. Everybody wants to see everything done, but they don't want to help. I'm serious, that's what we're having. They want to put it off on one particular person that doesn't have the time to do it
And then
all.
when you have that many entities, every entity has its own main priority. And maybe it has to be that for this marketing campaign, marketing department, marketing group, you're in or you're out. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
The country club, you're in or you're out. The POA, you're in or you're out. Timeshare, garden club, whatever, not, I'm only in for this amount for this thing. It may need to be, I don't know legally or organizationally how you set it up, but maybe this has to be run a little bit differently than everything else, in that you're in or you're not. And then if you're in, it's the goals of the marketing committee of Sky Valley, which hopefully will cover everybody to some degree, because I think we all want the same thing. We want a beautiful valley with all our houses full and well-maintained and cared for, and the safety of our people and our property, and that we have ways to bring people in, which are going to help every organization, timeshare, garden club, POA, country club, the whole bit, but not this, because you can nitpick it to death, responsibility, no authority, everybody thinks they got the veto power. That will not work for this.
So one structure that may work is something that the city can set up called a Downtown Development Authority. Right now, we pay a certain percentage of our hotel motel tax out to other things to promote this area. If we did set up our own Downtown Development Authority, which would have the authority to spend the money it's going to receive, it could solicit donations from different organizations on an annual amount, and then the city would be able to budget how much it would contribute to that authority to its hotel motel tax.
And also too, I'd like to reiterate, with the Downtown Development Authority, the city does not have the authority to dictate what they do.
That's right.
That is a total separate entity. I want to make sure people understand that, because that is the way that works.
And all that goes back to, what are the goals now? What are the goals you want to accomplish?
Sure.
So that they're copacetic with each other and you know, to get it started. But from that point on, it's, let's get it done, so to speak, and have the people that are capable and able to do it. And I love the thought that Paul just brought up, and that once this thing is set up, it's a train that's going under its own motion.
Right.
And none of the 4 entities or 5 entities or 12 entities that could possibly come along drive the train.
Right.
It's almost like the train drives itself.
Takes the politics out.
Yeah.
Takes the politics out.
It takes the
Pretty
politics,
much. I mean,
absolutely.
there's
It takes the
politics in
There's some
every-
things that politics have no place in. That's why we have a capitalistic society, because most private businesses do better than ones that have government involvement in them.
Yeah.
The one thing you'll never get around is that every year, whichever entity it is going to have to reapprove the budget, you know, their portion of the budget. That's just going to have to be done from a legal standpoint, so. But on the downtown authority, that you're talking about, development authority, then would the resort tax be able to go to our authority as opposed to where it's going now to a Raymond County authority or something?
I don't know the answer to that right offhand.
Well, that would be a good one, because number one, we're being shorted on that tax because of Airbnb and vacation rental, et cetera, and somehow we gotta get control of that. That tax would go up significantly, and that would be funds. Right now, how much are we required by the Georgia, 40% of the income?
Right, it's 40%,
And that's-
yes, sir.
So that's $4,000 or $5,000 a year that we're required to put into that anyway.
It would also give us the ability in the future to raise our hotel motel tax to 8% rate, which would create a potential incentive if somebody wanted to build a small little 50 to 100 room lodge that had some meeting areas attached to it. That sets up a scenario for a public-private venture to make that happen. And so the Downtown Development Authorities are usually set up to bring in that commercial business to promote that, to reach out to people. So I think it's probably a smart thing to do. We looked into it in 2018 a little bit and didn't follow through with setting that up, but it's maybe something we should look at for next year.
Paul, somewhere along the line, when this was brought up before, they said that we have this, we get this organization and we get this all done, that they have the authority to take and issue bonds to do projects with.
Yeah, that is correct.
So they have that control over the whole city, this committee.
Well, you can look at it that way, but you wouldn't ever have that project be approved if the funds weren't gonna be there to cover it. You're covering it out of the 8% hotel motor tax. And then you have a private developer sign on to make up the difference of that, if you're loaning that tax.
Right.
So it takes the risk off the.
Because normally with a DDA, you mainly work on contributions, which would mean you would work on contributions like from the club, the POA, the city. That's what I was used to working with previously. The Downtown Development Authority did it that way. They would go out and do fundraisers and such. So it's something, that might be a good option for us to look at. I just want to make sure that we don't do all this and realize, oops, how are we going to do our events? Who's still going to do that? I don't want us to be in that situation. Oh, we're going to be right back where we're at right now. I don't want us to be in that situation. So just trying to look at it from all right.
The one question I have, and this probably is for Ella, it's been my information, and can't tell you where I got it, that there were surpluses in 17 and 18, money allocated for marketing that was not spent. And my question is, what can we do with that? I want to say there's like $5,000 to $7,000, maybe. I don't know exactly how much. And so my question is, can you spend that?
Well, this becomes a problem, and I read it, so board meeting minutes where you report we got this much money in this account. There is no account out there.
Yeah, I know there's no account, but
So,
the co-mingled funds, I read.
But you also have to take in consideration our income rates. How much time did the city put into this? How much personnel did we put into this?
special events.
That we're not accounting for in these numbers.
Oh,
You have to consider that as well. I mean, there's a lot of in-kind services that the city has provided that are not included.
Yeah, I would say all the accounts are zero
That
as
doesn't
of
answer my question.
2018.
You're saying there is no surplus.
No.
On paper, there is. That's it. It's on paper.
Well,
Well, if it's on paper, how can it not be reality?
that's as good at accounting.
If there's good accounting, if it's on paper, it's real. So if there's money that's in an account or wherever it is that was earmarked and collected for marketing, it needs to still be there, and you probably would say, here's the beginning budget for this new entity. You can't just say it doesn't exist. And, we could say, oh, well, we had X amount of people doing this, that, and the other thing, and therefore it spent all the money. No, if you didn't account it that way, you can't say that.
Well,
You may want to say it, but you can't legally say it. Go ahead.
Just, we've got a couple of issues here, I think, that need to be resolved, and the one that needs to be resolved right away is you identified some time ago that this was a problem for the city. I suggest that we get a rep from each of the organizations to sit down with Ella and decide how to reconcile that account.
Right.
And then I think I'm hearing that the city in the future doesn't want to be involved in trying to manage these funds, and so,
Yeah,
Steve.
good point, Ed. I mean, it seems like right now we need to get with Ella, and if you guys are coming up that y'all have $5,000 in there, let's get you a check written for $5,000, let's get the club, whatever back. We'll take into account what we've spent this year before we issue those checks, and I think it's gonna come out about zero. I think it's gonna wash out pretty close, but let's sit down and come to a compromise. That'll legally reconcile it, and then we can form a marketing committee. The marketing committee might recommend, hey, we should do it, downtown development authority.
And we can do this, like, including Fall Fest, we want to make sure we include those funds, so we're not sitting there, holding the bag on Fall Fest this year too, so that's our biggest one is
No,
Fall
I think
Fest.
what you're saying there, because those are all items that the city is within, you had to budget them or you couldn't have spent that
Right.
money. But between the POA and the city and the club, we ought to establish a understanding Steve, maybe under the POA, that instead of the city trying to manage that, they would do it under the POA. Neil could go back and give us history on that, probably, of how difficult it was back in the Linda Brett days when we were trying to do fireworks, and we've got all these different expenditures out there, and the different entities trying to figure out how to pay for them. And so it really makes sense if you could centralize that, Steve.
Well, yeah, I mean, even back in Linda Brett's day though, and this is Doug Palmer, that was accounted for through the city.
Always.
Okay? That, those funds were, yes it was. I mean, in what I saw when I first came into it, like I said, I never sat on the committee full time, but I saw accounting for it, you know, that Linda provided, that, you know, showed expenses. But if you've got outstanding expenses for Fall Fest, we've all committed to that in the past.
Right.
I don't see where that would be segregated out. You know, of course, you need to
Right.
take it out of the money that's there. I don't think there's a debate by anybody on that side.
Okay.
And I think the city needs to provide certain services like police protection and, you know, certain kinds of labor.
Well, that's true, but that would not be marketing budget.
Correct.
We're talking
Would be
about a
event.
marketing campaign, department, whatever you want to call it, that is to promote.
Well, Ella's saying there's two things. There's a marketing budget, and then there's also some events.
That's what I was just fixing to say. I think we
Yeah.
need to separate these two out. I think that's the problem. They've all been convoluted together, and they need to be two separate items, actually.
Well, isn't that, I'm totally rookie to this, isn't that what the 2 and the 3 is about?
But also, there's also, no, that
Sure,
doesn't
yeah, not
include all
really.
of it. There's also like Fall Fest, you know, 4th of July, that is not included in some of these numbers as
Oh,
well.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Well, then the structure is probably the most important thing to start off with.
I agree with that, I agree with that.
Before you spend one piece of dollar. And then, what are the goals? The goals may be, we don't want to have a marketing department. Let's just leave it alone. Then we don't have to fool with it. Or we have goals that are very, very high and out there, and then there's going to have to be some kind of budget to support that kind of activity. You know, we can't be just going into it like nilly-willy, like the lady said, we're going to have a lemonade stand. What are we trying to accomplish, and what are all the 4 entities trying to accomplish?
All right.
And Bob,
I think that
that's the-
everything that you have said is excellent. And what I would suggest is from the club, POA, garden club, women's club, timeshare in the city, that we appoint one person, and then out of 6, out of the 6, we'll get together. And I would like to ask you if you could just oversee the first meeting or 2
Me?
to get this, yes, you,
Okay. I opened my mouth too much, didn't I?
and just to oversee it. Not that you don't have to be on the committee, but just to be an advisor, to get this thing settled out through.
Will that position be
Then
budgeted?
you-
Will it-
then-
Yeah. I'll give you the same thing I did all with them.
And then we'll bring this all back together.
Sure,
And have
okay.
another
I'll be
meeting.
happy
I
to
need to
do
do
that.
that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Maureen Blatt. Is it appropriate to include somebody from the Realtors? Because they too do marketing.
Well, you get a committee, you get too darn many people in there, then you're gonna have a mess.
Okay.
Are the realtors going to contribute?
Yeah, this is the point I'd like to make, was kind of, you only want people in this committee, a small committee, that have meat in the pot.
Skin in the game.
Skin in the game, that's what I was trying to think of. Skin in the game, money, that the club can put money, the POA can put money, the city can put money, you know? Who else can put money or stand up and say, all right, we raised money and we'll put money in, and we'd like a voice in it. And then get that group with authority to put together and research and put a plan to present to the city I think, because the city wants, the city wants to understand what's going on and
Of course.
back every minute of it, okay, and have minutes of it and all that.
Well, I think,
Legally.
if you have something like this, it takes the diverse organizations that have their own agendas and mission statements and goals, and we put them on the same team. It's kind of like the military. Okay, there's the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard. And they all defend our country to varying degrees, and they all benefit from a marketing campaign. Now, do the Marines equate to the same amount as the Army? Maybe, probably not, who knows? But for this particular purpose, we're on the same team. We're gonna storm the beach together, accomplishing all of our goals together, sharing the money expenses together, and at least for the time being, we're not fighting with each other. But this entity, we're not fighting with each other. And I'm not saying we are, I'm just saying,
It doesn't cost Realty to have an office building in Sky Valley? I mean, shouldn't they have a big interest in our success,
I would think they should, and yes, so they should also be willing to contribute.
I would think they would.
Yeah.
Watch Realty.
Yes.
Gigi Oliver, I agree of having one representative of the four entities that we're talking about, but that does not mean that the four entities understand what marketing is all about. So therefore, you do need to hire someone that understands that process and has done that process, and has accountability and understands everything. Not only the realtors, like she mentioned in the back, we have to have some confidentiality with our clients. So we cannot share a lot of that information. We can share as to where our clients go. We can share as to where we market, because that's what we do. Where we market, where our clients come from, but we can't share too much information. But I truly believe you need to have someone in the marketing that has a marketing degree or understands where to look for the business, and give some facts and figures.
Well, I think that's very nice, but I think we gotta get this committee first
Yes.
and get some guidelines at the beginning and then go from there. And now we've heard from a lot of you people, Mrs. Brown from the timeshares, I see you sitting up there rocking. Would you like to get up and make any comment?
Yes, I would actually. Just like Ella with Fall Fest, my guys are the ones that paint the hay bales, and I have to pull one of my guys off of their projects to do certain things. We have committed to supporting the city, doing everything that we can. All that we ask as a return is that we're part of this committee. We need to be part of the committee. We need to all be one, not separate. That's all that I ask. Timeshares have been left out quite a lot in my 3 years that I've been here. And we contribute a lot.
Yes, she does.
So that's all I ask.
I definitely agree with you. As road retirement council. Timeshares.
Is there any more?
Back in the back, I want to say though, the timeshares didn't want to be part.
I agree.
Early on in my.
Right, and I've only been here for 3 years, but in my 3 years, we haven't been apart, and there's a new sheriff in town, as like I say.
That's a good thing. All right.
Okay, so my understanding, make sure I'm understanding what the plan is at this point is you're going to do a committee. We need to get, as he suggested, we need to get the committee together, get some goals, and then present it back to council for approval. And with the recommendation from the committee, because we don't need to bring anything back to council that the committee has not approved.
Right.
I mean, what, we're gonna be in the same boat. I don't wanna see us going back and forth with this. We need to make sure that we're all on the same page here and can get some results out
The
of
big thing
this.
would be the person from each entity that's on the committee has to be able to speak a voice that has power behind it.
Right.
And
And
say,
they
yes,
have to be delegated
Yeah.
authority from their organization to make decisions.
yeah.
And the
Approve,
city,
make decisions.
what I'm thinking, is that committee comes to the city and says, we think this is the way it will work best. This is how we want to move forward. We talk to the city because the city can talk to everybody.
Right.
And, we have a way to communicate best, I think, to our citizens that this committee is doing this and they're moving out and show the city's support for it
Right.
after the presentation, I guess.
So,
And I agree, professional, if we can, if the committee says, we're gonna spend so much of this pot for professional oversight or whatever it is.
Well, what I said earlier
That's
was
that would be their committee.
whoever on the committee has to be able to speak for that organization
And the city
and be
would have-
capable of doing it.
Yes.
Does everybody have to have an actual marketing degree? No, but they need to know, the ins and outs and the goings on. We don't need somebody to just sit here and say, well, I don't know, I gotta go back and talk to somebody. You gotta come in with input. You have to come in with opinion
We got-
that is from and is supported by their entity. Otherwise,
They have
it's
to
a
be a
total,
worker bee, they have to
Yeah.
go out and research when the committee
otherwise
says.
it's a total waste of time. So who's ever making the appointments from their group, please,
all right.
give it the best you got.
The thing is, right now, that we have the club, we have representatives from the club here, the POA, Garden Club, Women's Club too?
No.
No. We'll notify them. And the timeshare, that one, and the city. Now, what we can do is make the only thing wrong with the city is the fact that, that the council I could appoint somebody and they might not be here
Next
after
month.
another month.
Are there any of you that you know you will be here?
The city will be taken and appoint somebody, and it's going to be on the tail end of the others. But
We've had
until
somebody
then,
always be.
Neil, would you stop for a minute, please? Thank you. And so we'll have it all done now. If we can set a time limit as to when to bring this all back together. I mean, to notify Ella of the appointment for each club. If they give it to Ella, and then we can give it to Big Bob, and we'll have them all notified to go to, have the first meeting to get some idea what we're going to try to accomplish. Or
Well, I think that's a good idea, having a time deadline to let Ella know who the reps are. As far as the first meeting goes, I'm going to be out of town most of the next 3 weeks. So it's going to have to be.
And I got Falcon and budget, so.
All right, so when's Fall Fest over?
19th, that's the.
All right,
the
well,
days that
I'm
it
even
needs
now
to be done.
past that, I'm past the 24th, so we can look at a calendar and pick a date.
Do I understand that the first order of business for this committee that's being formed is to put together the framework for how this
Idea
would
is
work?
that too.
In other words, what the mission is, who's
Yes.
responsible, the fact that, like he says, that the representative has the ability to commit. In most cases, it's going to have to be subject to council approval or subject to board approval, because that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But all of that has to be down in a document so everybody knows.
That's correct.
Yeah, I agree with that. The part that was like subject to not anybody's town council approval is once the marketing committee is
Once
together,
it's funded.
and once it's funded, and we start making decisions on what we're gonna spend the money in promoting, that's gotta be hands-free. But up until that point, yes. Who's on it? Do they have the power? What are the goals of your organization that we can mention to, here's a list of what we're trying to accomplish together? That's what we're gonna come up with.
Great.
Oh,
I got a quickie, Bob. But I would suggest, Ella, that we invite somebody from the club and the POA sooner than later. Let's get this account reconciled.
Okay, let me go back through this report and make sure there's nothing I missed. I'd like to make sure I haven't missed anything as far as including it in the right.
I might, our controller may want to sit down with it, because he wants to understand it himself, so then I can put it to bed.
Right, okay.
You let us know when.
Okay, I'll do that.
After Fall Fest.
Yeah, after fall this.
anything else, Russell? I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and second, all in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.